because I'm definitely putting that knight on f4.
Yeah, drop it in. And this is a monster threat. Knight takes pawn, backed up, protected by the black queen. He puts his rook on a really weird square to defend. But I fear for Hikaru. It definitely feels like this is the position where it could spiral out of control. If black can just move his queen, get the rook into the game, this pawn is a massive target.
That's very simple. Queen d7. I also like, you know, we like aggression. g5 and then g4, and it takes, right? And then, I mean, it even opens up lines here. Queen f6, queen g6 is there too as well. The fact that, hey, you're in a pin. You can be pinned here. g5, g4 is nice. Queen d7 is nice. I mean, there's all kind of stuff here.
Yeah, looking good for black, I've got to say. Robert, what do you think?
No, I don't like this at all for Hikaru, and I think part of it is the match score. He really needs to get this game. I think he's feeling that pressure because Fabiano, extremely well prepared. You need to maximize your chances. Game 1 did not go Hikaru's way despite the good position and the lead on the clock. Here in Game 2, Fabiano has no problems whatsoever, not just on the board, but also on the clock. With the downfall that could have been in Game 1 was on the clock. He's keeping steady there. His position is better. He has more activity. He has more harmony between his pieces. White's bishops over there on the queen side, they're not really doing anything, not threatening anything, whereas black may sacrifice a bishop on h3 for an attack, and the pawn on d3 is backwards and threatened by numerous black pieces. I think the next few moves should be quite easy for Fabiano to play.
Yeah, and I like the start. I like this first move, kicking back white's dark squared bishop from its active post. Just Hikaru, okay, he steps back now. I wouldn't be surprised if another pawn follows. There we go. Play with the momentum. You step back, I step forward. And all of those white bishops being kicked now. Hikaru trying to trade things off, but suddenly there's stuff to calculate. Suddenly there are tactics in the air. And I'm wondering whether Fabi can get greedy here to try and grab a pawn. Some tricks. Oh, I'm trying to work this out. What do we think here?
There are some tricks. Take. But then if you take on d3, I mean, is there a rook d1? But then knight c5.
Show
maybe.
this.
Well, this is sick. What is going on here?
Yeah. This is the first thing you calculate, right? If it works, great, you win a pawn. If it doesn't, you can rule it out and move on to more positional decisions. Knight takes pawn, rook to d1. It looks like a pin. And here, I just stopped here. The knight can retreat, attacking the white queen, and I thought, okay, this is too complicated. Let's let Fabi work it out. But I guess the whole kind of evaluation here rests upon rook takes queen, knight takes queen, and we head to the endgame. And at the very end, white does take this pawn. So I'm not sure that that would have been a good idea. Fabi says, no, don't want to calculate it. Why not just advance all these pawns forward? Look at the pawn storm incoming on the queen side.
Wow.
It's like Space Invaders over here. Those pawns are going forward, and they're actually creating threats because now the pawn on d3 is actually under attack, and black can push the b pawn, push that forward to it, kick that bishop out of its nice perch on c3. So I feel like Fabiano just gaining ground in this position. We saw Hikaru drop back to defend that pawn on d3, but that is a permanent weakness. It's what we call a backwards pawn. You cannot push it forward, and a pawn can't defend it. So this is a big problem for Hikaru strategically.
Fabiano Caruana planting that knight on f4, a pawn storm on the queen side. This is the second game in a row where Fabi has come on top after the opening phase of the game. Currently, the clock is level. Fabiano putting the pressure on Hikaru. He's definitely feeling the heat right now. James.
Well, 100% he's feeling the heat here. He actually needs to kick this knight off of f4 too as well. I mean, I think I remember even Robert talking about halves of the board, which is very important to understand. Like, this knight is on the half of the board, right side of the board, and this knight is very strong, right? So you need to kick it. There's some, in fact, that Panchenko book, actually, I was talking about in Mastering Middle Games, this was actually one of them. I think it was in a prophylaxis chapter, but it was about King h2, and you've seen Karpov do this, King h2 and Petrosian, actually. But King h2, knight to g1, and you play g3. And you kick the knight away, and then eventually you start pushing forward, but that takes some time, and you have to do this because this knight is so annoying, and you have to kick it away.
Yeah, is that super important for Hikaru right now to get rid of that knight on f4?
I think it's important, but it's also very difficult to do. We just saw by James' analysis, it takes a few moves to get that done. And even once you kick the knight out of there, you still have other problems across the board. That pawn on d3, long-term weakness that I mentioned. Black can continue pushing pawns on the queen side. We saw him play a4. Look at Fabiano. He's just saying, you're not going to push any of your pawns. You're not going to gain control of key squares. I'm going to push when I'm good and ready. And the position looks excellent for black on the queen side as well.
You said you're not going to push any of your pawns. Hikaru answers it by pushing the pawn on the king side. h4 on the board. Is this bravery or desperation?
I think it's a bit of desperation, and it needed to be done. It's similar to what James pointed out. The white king could have also gone to h2. Basically identical to the plan. It was to kick back this black knight. But now the black knight is going to relocate itself into the center, and still, this is maximum control. This is domination, I've got to say, from Fabiano Caruana. He's just controlled all of the important squares in the center, all of the pawn breaks at white's disposal, and white is stuck. White has to play purely with his pieces, while black is going to start ganging up against the weaknesses that Robert has pointed out. I'm looking at that white d pawn, that backward pawn. Easy target. All of the black rooks are actually going to line up against that weakness, and they might well just overwhelm Nakamura's defenses. He does not look happy at all, Hikaru, right now with his position.
This is an ugly position, very ugly position, and uncharacteristic in a way from Hikaru here. I mean, really, Fabi is taking it to him in this match right now, something that we all expected Hikaru to be just better here, but in fact, Fabi is turning it on its head. He's also doing great on time from the previous game. I mean, he was down so much time. Now, you know, he's doing way better on time here with the black pieces too as well, and really trying to assert the dominance here and say, hey, look, you're going to be very close to elimination if you lose this game.
Yeah, but Hikaru is creating a bit of a mess here right now. He is provoking Fabi on the king side. It's going to be a bad idea to capture that pawn. Yes, it's a free pawn, but you can't afford to give a nice square to the white knight. So Hikaru here, Robert, really trying to make the position as messy as he can.
He is. He's doing a good job of it. As you're saying, if you take that pawn, think about the squares that are left behind. Anytime a pawn moves, the squares that were previously under control no longer are that. So g takes h5 will be met by knight h4 into f5. That's a light square. You have a dark square bishop. It means you can't compete with it, and that's going to be a problem. So there's no way Fabiano is going to take that pawn. He has two options. Either he pushes his pawn forward in the starting position, saying your knight's not getting over there, even if I weaken the square, or he says, well, what's the big deal? You take me on g6, I take back. That opens up the f file, and maybe I can use that with attacking chances. So I feel like Fabi, he slides his rook over. He understands it's not the end of the world to see that capture. The isolated e5 pawn, you're not going to be able to attack it very simply.
Yeah, and potential threat on the board. The knight could jump in due to some tension now between the black rook and the white queen. So hinting at something along that line, Hikaru instantly drops back, and still the tension remains between these two pawns. I'm not sure what I would do, to be honest. I would love to push this pawn forward, but long term, you could imagine the white knight somehow sneaking into this square and punishing you later. It takes a while to get there, but all these top players, they're hesitant to create those long-term weaknesses. And Fabi, again, just keeping control, not changing the status quo, defends the pawns with his king. The one thing I do see potentially going wrong for Fabi is after the white king steps up, some rooks or queens sliding across. If things do open up, the black king, maybe not entirely safe, but yeah, for now, it's all under control. And the white knight's actually jumped back. I'm not sure where it's going from there, but maybe opening up a path for the white queen. Yeah, Hikaru, it's hustle mode, I feel like, and he wants to at least scare Fabi with some ideas.
I don't even know where we're going. What is the idea? This is tough. Maybe king g2, knight g4, like you mentioned, or like with the idea of queen h1 or something like that. This is very hard to make anything work in this position. I don't have any pawn breaks, right? So I can't play f4. It's on lock. The only thing I have is like the h file. My rook is strangely placed on e3. I do have to defend the d3 pawn because it's backward. I'm always worried about a b4 push at some point. I have to move the bishop out of the way. Then the d4 square opens up. You know, it's annoying. Now, a4 will be hanging in some cases there, so maybe I would like that. But here, it's definitely difficult for white to make some ground here. Hopefully, if I'm white, I'm like, Fabi, please keep thinking, right? Because like, so you can get lower on time, and that's when you start to make mistakes.
Yeah, but that's the big question, what you just said. That is b4 a possibility or not? And James, you called it. Fabi agrees it is time to push that pawn, put pressure and control the d4 square for his own knight. But now he's got to watch out for that a4 pawn, which is a little tender.
Yeah, and look at Hikaru. He drops that bishop back to e1. He does so quickly. That's the most important thing he's doing. You look at the clock, the 2-minute advantage for the moment. And Fabiano, he has a nice position, but the a4 pawn is targeted. He might need to defend it. He says, no, I don't need to, but can I grab it?
I mean, sure, why not? Exactly. Grab it, and then what's the next move? f5? I don't understand. What are you doing? This is a freebie.
Rook a8.
Rook a8, queen d1. Oh, take.
Yeah.
Takes.
Takes. Yeah. Take the juicer, right? We have the juicer.
Yeah, and this would be the outcome of all that taking, all that little transformation there. And at the very end, black does have active pieces. So, okay, rather than investigate this, Hikaru has simply put his rook on a newfound outpost. This c4 square wasn't previously available to white and cannot be challenged by black's pieces. Nice little move, and this one is not going anywhere anytime soon. Still a target for later on.
That was a great move.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah, no, it looks good. I mean, James just using a square that was previously unavailable, and now I feel like Black, he's on the clock again.
Yeah, he's back on the clock again. Rook c4 was very nice. He's also attacking b4 for real. Like, I'm going to take it twice and actually get my pieces active. a4 is hanging. You go b3, a4 still hangs. That actually is a very nice move. It was very precise here, and you need these, of course, these counter-punching moves or tempo, extra time, right? You need this, and that was a time-grabbing move there, and it also makes Fabi think here. Rook c4 was very nice. We do have to deal with the b4 pawn actually hanging now.
Yeah. It was so tempting for Fabi to push those pawns. But is it turning around right now, Robert?
I think the position objectively is okay for Black, but it is starting to get into scary territory because you had everything under control, but the last couple moves have gone White's way. Your pawn is hanging directly on b4 and on a4. White's rook and queen, they're teaming up on those pawns. And Black, you don't just want to go defensive in this position. So Fabi's played very well to this point, but the trajectory is going in Hikaru's favor.
Yeah, it was the last game. The momentum, the trajectory was going up and down, and here it's all been Fabi until the last few moves. He's lost control, and now he steps back with his queen. We're all leaning forward here because is he not just losing a pawn? Is he not giving up a pawn on b4?
What is this?
I think it's just about activity, just trying to keep your pieces active.
Yeah, he's giving up this pawn. It can be taken immediately here and now. And, okay, why not? Just go for it. What is the big idea? Is it that here, for example, there are tricks? The knight would now jump in with a double attack. If White takes the other way, however, then there might also be tricks. I'm looking for them now. I don't see anything immediately, but it feels like there's tension between the queens. After rook takes rook, there's no way you can jump the knight out effectively to attack this White queen. It looks a bit scary for White, looks a bit loose, but you are a pawn up.
And there's a lack of coordination between the b2 and c4 pawns. So this is what strong players do. They give up material saying, it's not the end of the world for me to be down a pawn. Look at all of the practical play I get. The c4 pawn is loose. The b2 pawn will also be a target. I think that's what Fabiano is relying on. Maybe just queen c6, rook c8, team up on that c4 pawn, and perhaps there's no way to defend it, especially with that White knight on h2. It's out of play.
Very strong.
He doesn't go for it. Instead, he makes a small little move on the king's side, just stepping up with the king. So easy to even miss that this move has happened on the board. Doesn't pick up the b4 pawn, avoids the complication, and now Fabi shuts it down on the queen's side.
Yeah, now Fabi has a beautiful square for the Black Knight to jump into, really disturbing the harmony between White's pieces. Maybe Hikaru being too brave there, just keeping the tension one move too long. And the top players, they're not greedy. They prioritize piece activity over everything, other than calculation, maybe. but yeah, suddenly, Fabi's got control again. What do we think?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think Fabi definitely has control now. He may have had to try to go for that pawn, but I mean, Robert had a great point there, of course. So you just give up the pawn, you may be getting it back. My pieces are so active here. I mean, in this position, I feel like I'm just suffering now. I mean, look at this pass. This boy is passed. And then if knight c2 happens, I mean, that's super annoying. Maybe you sack the exchange, but that's not necessary. Like, my pieces just feel very strange here. But I mean, okay, a4, we could argue that a4 is very weak. The queen is tied to it right now. We also have c5 that maybe we can attack at some point. It's going to be difficult, but chances for both sides here. Definitely, I think Fabi has a slight edge.
Yeah, can Fabi try and reroute that bishop, make that dark squared bishop a little active, bring it to g5 somehow? I see the rooks that Hikaru has, and it just feels like they're a little shaky there.
It's going to sound weird, but I think Fabian doesn't want to win the game. Not that he's trying not to if it presents himself, but he just wants to make a draw. He understands with a full point lead in this match, he'll get White in game 3. He could end the match with a draw here and then a win with White in game 3, but he can play it safe. The likeliest outcome between two top GMs is a draw, so why take unnecessary risk? And the position is closed now. Hikaru himself didn't want to capture that pawn because it felt like it actually allowed Fabiano to make an easier path towards equality with some liquidation, with some easier moves, especially in time trouble. But we see it backfiring. Hikaru's already in for a deep think, and his position, I think, is worse than Fabiano's.
Yeah, the main thing is not to lose control if you're Fabiano. And, of course, he's lost control slightly compared to what he had earlier. He's slightly behind on the clock, but things are moving back in his direction. We mentioned the momentum going up and down. It was all Fabi, then suddenly Hikaru, now back to Fabi, and that is a very positive thing for him. But, okay, the knight trade imminent now. White hoping to be able to capture knights. Black's knight is, of course, his strongest piece. Does Fabi say yes or no to that? Which one is Hikaru going to fear most? Keeping knights on the board or trading them off? Big question now.
Yeah, big question. And there was a big question in chat that I saw. We've been talking about all the trumps in Fabi's position, and chat wants to know, what is a good plan here for Fabi? Position looks great, but what's next?
Good question. Improve the pieces. It's very much move by move, and you very much have to adapt, react to your opponent's ideas too. So this last move, you have to react if you're Fabi. Either you agree to the knight trade, and you have to weigh up the pros and cons there, or you do jump in. We mentioned a very juicy square for the black knight on c2 a few moments ago, and you can jump in, gain time. There we go.
There it is.
He does it. And
Call David.
Yeah, the white rook has to step back. It's trapped unless you sacrifice, but I don't think you'll get enough compensation there. Maybe, it is a bit sad retreating though, so what do we think here? Is he going to sacrifice rook for knight? He's thinking about it, Hikaru.
He's definitely thinking about it because there's something that we've forgotten about, and I think the players might have forgotten about. That pawn on h5, that rook pawn that's all the way over there, it can be captured, right? If the rook goes back to e2, maybe it's time to just take this pawn on h5. Because, yes, your knight can go to h4, but then I might play bishop f6. I've cleared some of the path in front of the black king, and maybe it's the white king that's going to be in grave danger. So I actually think Fabiano, he's done it.
Yeah,
he's captured the
board,
pawn.
Robert.
Wow.
He might be going for the white king, suddenly switching focus completely. I forgot about this side of the board, I've got to be honest. I just assumed that tension would be there until the end of time. But suddenly, black could be the one throwing pawns forward. You want a pawn? Why not give it back? Open up the white king and look at this.
And the a4 pawn, as you pointed out, Fabi steps it up with the rook to stop that idea, keeps it under control. Fabi is really holding on to each of these pawns with dear life right now.
Tanya, check this out. Fabi has no time. He has no time right now.
But watch
Knight
out.
a3?
Yeah, he is threatening a knight sacrifice with that move. That knight can take on a3 in the pass pawn, or
Is it
even
happening?
wait.
Whoa, he's just
Knight c3
ignored
maybe.
it. Take that pawn. Why
Yeah,
not?
but there's knight c3
Yeah,
in
that's
the
knight c3 though.
There might be knight c3, but now the black rook can come in. I'm not sure which square you use. Wow, okay, we didn't go for this, the white knight holding things together. Instead, we see Fabi go for a different pawn. Now this bishop is free, hitting the white rook. This knight is on a nice square, still 2 pawns up. But how do you deal with the threat against this bishop? You have to be very calm. He guards it with his king. Suddenly anything could happen here, both sides going active. But look at this pawn. It could become a queen later on in the game. If white doesn't have something now, this pawn will win the game.
20 seconds to Fabi. There's always a sacrifice on a3 that Hikaru has to watch out for. He attacks the rook. Fabi attacks the rook in return. But is that a big blunder?
Hit him with a move. Hit him
laughing.
with a move.
You've got rook c6. No, there.
Yeah, this rook d8, it's going to happen. Well, let's see it. You're going to take my knight, I'll take yours. That was a big blunder by Fabiano. He did not have much time, and that was relentless counterplay by Hikaru Nakamura. So right now, Hikaru's up a piece, but that b3 pawn for black is very far advanced. So look at Fabi go. He's going to right after that pawn. He wants a passer of his own.
Fabi's shaking his head. He doesn't know what the evaluation of the position is. We see the eval bar says it's still equal, but in Fabi's head, he's just made a big blunder.
Yep, he basically had this exact position, but with an extra bishop. So he's thrown a bishop off the board, and he's still fighting. And here, he just has to keep moving, keep pace. 10 seconds on the clock. It's not easy, but Fabi's plan is simple at least. He's going for those white pawns. At least it's one way, kind of one-track mind right now. Just go for that those white pawns with everything you've got.
And the white knight is actually trapped back there. That move, the knight can't get out of here. So maybe the black king will go backwards. And where's that knight going to? The answer is nowhere, and he does it. So actually, white might be frozen here.
Wow, yeah,
What
the
a
white
move.
bishop is stuck defending pawns, the white rook's stuck defending the white knight, which is trapped. White can only play with the king.
I saw this coming. I saw this coming. Knight a3 and then rook c1, right? And then now you can't move the rook. Well, you can still move the knight now.
The knight's coming back.
Right, exactly. And I'm getting pawns. I'm like, hey, whatever. I'm about to go get the a pawn. Oh my goodness. I go grab the a, right? Take on g and grab the a.
Maybe there's a b2 push at some point because the rook has to go back for white, and that means the knight
Take
is
the
hanging.
knight. Oh my goodness.
It's on the
There
board.
it is. It's on the board.
It's on the board.
Oh,
And this is
Hikaru
completely lost because
raises
you
his
end
hand.
up with 2 extra pawns for black, but the king is getting very active.
Yeah, white's king very active. 2 pawns down, though. Fabi trying to trade off, trying to mop up. And that white a pawn, doomed. Forget about it. Go active with the white king. Everything's disappearing. I do think white should be just in time to save this game. Rook's pawns are not the best pawns to be pushing when you want to win. But, okay, nice, classy move there from Hikaru. He ties down that black rook, and he guards across the 4th rank. The white king will deal with that pawn. The white rook will deal with that pawn, and it should end in a draw. But you still have to be careful.
That's true. That's true.
Make the
Especially
white
with
king
time.
back, and it's just in time. The white king will sit in front of that black pawn, and it's a draw. Look at Hikaru, so annoyed.
It's even a draw if white did not have this f2 pawn. That's how theoretically drawn it is. You could throw that pawn off the board. It doesn't matter. The white rook will just go back and forth. The king does not take that pawn. If that king ever took the pawn, the black rook would leave with check along the 1st rank, and then black would promote.
Yeah. And the players there. And exactly what you're talking about, Robert, with that, it ends. And wow, Hikaru looked a little angry at the end, but I have to say he has to be relieved. He was in so much trouble, so much pressure that even after Fabi blundered an entire piece, it was still fine for Fabi. And Hikaru there, probably a laughter of relief. He knows he still stays in the game, but such an epic fight. And that's what we see in his expression after all those complications, after all that navigating through the scramble that we just saw. It was a big fight. Ended with a draw. David, what a game. Take us through it.
Yeah, what a game. And in the end, it was a tale of two blunders. First, it was Fabi. From a dominant position, he blundered a piece. It was here. Maybe he thought that his rook was trapped. There's actually not too many safe squares.